people will be more efficient, or they would have been more knowledge in certain aspects of the questions. But what I feel is those questions which majority have went wrong, which needs more discussion. So I was scrutinizing all your papers, everything I was scrutinizing, A to Z. I found around 30 to 40 questions, majority went wrong. Majority went wrong. So those things need special attention. Some things you people will have to go back and read properly, because I used to say maximum information in minimum time should always be the target. Your self-reading time should not be lost. Okay, so let's see the first question. So this was the first question. Placed a patient presents with peptic ulcer. Always read the statement properly. What was the question? The question was, it is not associated with. Okay. See, it's not a good big chunk question, but you need to select the false option. When I looked at the first, see, just look at the graph. You can see that the majority went wrong. The first question, the very first question. Majority, you just sum up. And only just 24 people got it right. This is the problem. Because even for small questions, you feel that you know things, but there is a high chance that you feel that after your exam, you feel that you have done it right. You feel that you got marks, but when the rank comes, you won't be in the list, or you would be down to the list. The main thing is that you think you are right, but you have gone wrong. Okay. In the Harrison, the latest Harrison, they have given certain associations of peptic ulcer. They have mentioned strong associations, probable associations, possible associations. All those things have been mentioned. Cirrhosis per se, when you take cirrhosis, there is something called portal hypertension. You can get portal hypertensive gastropathy. The mucosal defense mechanism is weakened. One of the main cause for the peptic ulcer. Peptic, what does this ulcer means? What does the word mean, or what does ulcer means? Ulcer means what? Ulcer means that there is a more than 5 mm break. There is a break of more than 5 mm. One of the important point for the entrance question. So what do we call if the size is less than 5 mm? You call it as an erosion. So erosion, ulcer. If you extend erosion, it becomes an ulcer. Better say that. And the depth is something up to the submucosa. If you couple both erosion and ulcer, you can call it as something like a peptic ulcer disease, PUD. A spectrum. So less than 5 mm, erosion. More than 5 mm, you call it as an ulcer. Depth till submucosa. Peptic. From where does this peptic come? Pepsinogen, proteolytic, high associations. So mainly, when you have your defense mechanism of the mucosa is disturbed, if it is bifurcated, your normal defense mechanism of the mucus, prostaglandins, everything is affected. It can result in an erosion. It can cause an ulcer. It may be due to multiple reasons. So that was the question. Cirrhosis, portal hypertensive gastropathy, many ways you can connect. The mucosal defense mechanism is lost. Definitely there is an association. Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, obviously yes. What is this ZES, Zollinger-Ellison syndrome? Any takers, ZES? Anyone? What do you do that? You get an increased gastrin secretion. You get increased hydrochloric acid overproduction. Hypergastrinemia. Well, very good, Gayatri. Very good. Excellent. So Gayatri, what you do? What is the first test that you do when you have a suspicion of Zollinger-Ellison syndrome? Anyone? What do you do? Anyone? Yes, Magna, you are correct. You should tell not gastrin levels, Magna. Not gastrin. You should have told fasting gastrin level. The answer should be very precise, Magna. It should be fasting gastrin level. That is the first step. You demonstrate a hypergastrinemia. Sometimes you might have to check a basal acid output. Even the basal acid output is different for those patients who have undergone gastrectomy and those who have not undergone gastrectomy. There is a difference. More than 15 or 12 milliequivalents per hour, and the other one is 5 milliequivalents per hour, like that, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, keep in mind Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, an area of interest. Go back and read in detail. Hyperparathyroidism, obviously peptic ulcer associations. Can somebody connect hyperparathyroidism with Zollinger-Ellison? Anyone? I purposefully made all these questions so that it will evoke your brain. Evoke your brain. Can anyone connect? Anyone? Anyone? It's MEN. Do you remember a condition called MEN? Very important. Multiple endocrine neoplasia. Which MEN? MEN1. MEN1. Yes, peptic ulcers can be seen. Very good. How many MEN are there? How many MEN latest Harrison? How many? It's 4. Very good. MEN1 is there, 2, 2A, 2B, 2B you can call as 3, MEN4 also. What comes in trachea? MEN4. MEN4, even reproductive tumors. Reproductive tumors have been included in MEN4. Okay, think about that. Okay. Okay. In pernicious anemia, what do you get? You get an atrophy. You get an atrophy. And naturally, it's not going to link with peptic ulcer. So there is it's all a tricky way of placing questions. Tricky way of placing questions. And some additional points I will tell you. One, even advanced age have been told as a risk factor. Please note down. Systemic mastocytosis have been told as a risk association. Systemic mastocytosis. Alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. There is an association. Peptic ulcers association. Okay, peptic ulcer. You know that ulcers can occur in duodenum. Yes or no? Duodenum. What is the most common cause? It's H. pylori. Yes or no? H. pylori. What is the percentage? Like almost like 90-95%. There is association with duodenal ulcers, H. pylori. H. pylori with gastric ulcers almost to the tune of 75%. Even that is relevant. That percentage is relevant. Very important. So go back and read about the ulcers in detail. So one more thing. Yes, one more thing I have noted down. Certain things which I'm likely to miss, I have noted down. That is polycythemia rubra vera. Polycythemia rubra vera. There is an association with peptic ulcers. Very important. Peptic ulcers. Polycythemia rubra vera. You can get hypertension in polycythemia rubra vera. There can be vaso-occlusions, microvascular occlusions, and the defense mechanism is lost. Again, they are vulnerable for peptic ulcers. Polycythemia rubra vera patients, they are more vulnerable for hyperviscosity situations. That is the main difference between the susceptibility of multiple myeloma and polycythemia rubra vera. Many students have went wrong. A similar question have come for multiple myeloma and many got it wrong. In multiple myeloma, the susceptibility is for infections. In polycythemia rubra vera, the susceptibility is for hyperviscosity states. Have you heard of a condition called Budd-Chiari syndrome? Budd-Chiari, yes or no? Why? Why? One of the common causes, the myeloproliferative disorders. The rule number 1, the maximum common is the polycythemia rubra vera, which can cause hyperviscosity, hypercoagulable situation, and you get an occlusion and cause Budd-Chiari-like situation. Yes. So cirrhosis, see, in cirrhosis, what happens is you get portal hypertension. Yes or no? What is the change you can get in stomach? The change you can get in stomach is one is portal hypertension mechanism is lost or weakened. You can get gastric antral vascular ectasia. The submucous vessels, they are losing their defense mechanism and they get vulnerable for developing peptic ulcers. Yes. So that's important. Now, let's move on to the second question. Let's move on to the second question. Another tricky question. Now, with the first question, why I have discussed that much is I wanted you people to think and go ahead. That is the reason. So we need to increase the speed a bit. I just wanted to highlight how a question has to be approached. The rule number 1 is not should be looked at the question. You need to read the question correctly. Underline and read. Always underline and read. Okay. 45-year-old, chronic hep C, rash. What is the condition likely? Gayatri, what is the condition likely? What is the condition? This, forget about the options. You just forget about the options. What is it? Gayatri, is it porphyria cutanea tarda? No. I need to send an missile to Gayatri, straight to Gayatri. Priya, you are correct. You are correct. This is nothing but, yeah, Abhi, you are correct. Excellent. It's nothing but Cryoglobulinemi, vasculitis. This is the cryoglobulemi crash. Cryoglobulinemia. It's not porphyria cutanea tarda. No. But I would rather appreciate your thinking process, because hepatitis C ends with C. I used to teach my students, the moment it ends with C, it has many associations. One is porphyria cutanea tarda. C, porphyria cutanea tarda. Which is the most common porphyria? It's a porphyria cutanea tarda. Hepatitis C has got an association with cryoglobulinemia. C, again C. Again C, cryoglobulinemia. So cryoglobulemic crash. Well done, Magna. It has got an association with oral lichen planus. All these are favorite questions, favorite entrance pool. Suppose it is Hep B, which vasculitis is associated with anyone? Any taker? Suppose I have changed this to, yes, very good. Polyarthritis nodosa. Excellent. Excellent. Pakalya, excellent. But I would ask you one more question. What is the percentage like Hep B and polyarthritis nodosa? Can somebody tell me the percentage of association? Suppose you take, no, you're wrong. Suppose you take 100 people. Okay, if you take 100 people of polyarthritis nodosa patients, around 30% will have HBs antigen positive, 30%, but not the reverse. In the reverse, if you take 100 chronic Hep B patients, only 1% will have polyarthritis nodosa. Yes, Tanuja, you're only 1%. That was asked for PGI. That was a question for PGI. They have twisted the percentage and they have asked the question. Yes. So cryoglobulinemia, definitely the steroid, rituximab. See, everything is measures to treat this cryoglobulinemia. Yes. But for chronic Hep C with cryoglobulinemia, the basic treatment should be to attack the culprit. Who is the culprit? The culprit is Hep C. The culprit is Hep C. You need to target the Hep C. So HCV treatment is the best answer. HCV treatment is the best answer. You treat HCV treatment, you target NSVR. If you can target NSVR, what is this SVR? A sustained virological response with your latest drugs, the latest weapons. Okay, if you treat them, you can see that even the, very good, the sofosbuvir, daclatasavir, valpetasavir, you have so many of vir. All those are entrance questions. All those are entrance questions. If you can target them, you treat it, there is a decline in cryoglobulinemia. Don't forget, there is a decline in cryoglobulinemia. Let me ask you one more question. Okay, cryoglobulinemia, everyone answered. But tell me, which type of cryoglobulinemia is in association with Hep C? So that means cryoglobulinemia is of different types, yes or no? Anyone. Abhi, Vishnu, you are wrong. Tanuja, you are correct. Harshida, not fully correct. Harshida, no. But some people have told it correct. Yes. Let's. I have made a slide for you all because to save the time, it's actually type 2. Type 2 cryoglobulinemia, you call it as the essential mixed cryoglobulinemia, which has got the maximum association with Hep C, chronic Hep C. So that means there is a type 1, type 2, and type 3. Okay, there is type 1, type 2, and type 3. Okay, go back and read about this cold precipitable. It can be monoclonal, polyclonal. I'm not going, it's a cup of tea for the hematologist. Hep C linked association with glomerulonephritis. You should remember cryoglobulinemia. When there is an association with glomerulonephritis, not a good prognosis, it's a poor prognosis. It's a poor prognosis association or the presence of nephritis. It's a poor prognostic marker when you have a nephritis with cryoglobulinemia. Don't forget that. Now, please note down this picture. You won't get from textbooks because I myself made it. So you won't get from textbooks, only for ADR students. Okay. So you have type 1, you have type 2, type 3. For the easy remembrance, I made this. You get around 10 to 15 questions with this slide alone. Many a times they have asked in which cryoglobulinemia the RF factor is very strong. That was asked. What is the basic difference between this 1, 2, and 3? The 3, 1 is the polyclonal. In one, the RF factor is not there, it's absent. What really happens to the complement cascade or the complement level? In one, it is normal, but in 2 and 3, there is a binding, so the complement is used up. The 2 complement levels is coming down. Again, an entrance question which was asked many times. Many times. So the basically, remember monoclonal, polyclonal. 1 is monoclonal, RF factor is absent. 2 and 3. 2 is monoclonal with RF. 3 is polyclonal with RF. And both of them have got an affinity with the complement level usage, and the complement goes down and there is vasculitis. Remember the Hep C association also, the Hep C linked. So not going into too much of details. Please, these are all to evoke your brain. I know very well that you know many things, but I wanted you people to have your brain pushed into exam important area. That's what I want. That's what I really want. Cryoglobulinemia. Okay. So resolution of cryoglobulinemia that I have already noted down, and some additional points. If I have written vasculitis fundamental, cryoprecipitate hypokalemia, I told HCV, and very program of vascular therapy, antiviral, rituximab, all those things I have told. HCV associations also I have told. So basically that's it. Okay. So let's see what was the situation of our scoring system of the second question. Second question, only see majority got it wrong. 78 people has got it wrong. They went for, so that was the trickiness of the question. Nobody have asked you whether it is used for the treatment of cryoglobulinemia. Of course, prednisolone have got a role in cryoglobulinemia, rituximab, yes. So all those things are measures in cryoglobulinemia treatment. See the trickiness. Understand the trickiness. After exam, don't argue that this is a measure for problem and then why this is not the answer. No, you need to select the best answer. You need to select the best answer. The best answer, why? There is a chronic Hep C with cryoglobulinemia, target Hep C, treat it. If it's treated, rash comes down, your target should be to attain a sustained virological response of Hep C clearance with the latest drugs. Yes. So let's increase the speed a bit. Let's increase the speed. This I am happy that majority have got it right. Patient presented with dysphagia. Patient presented with dysphagia. He overcomes by raising hands above his head. Prakalya, what is the diagnosis? No, look, forget about the options. What is the diagnosis? Anyone? What is the diagnosis? I'm stopping at the second statement. The patient presented with dysphagia, he overcomes the same by raising the hands above. What is the diagnosis at that point? Anyone? Anyone with that statement? Nobody? It's very bad. Nobody? Very bad. What is the clue? It's achalasia cardia. Achalasia cardia people, they used to say that they get relieved with dysphagia once with Valsalva maneuver, raising the hands above the shoulder, all those different measures they would go. So that is one of the point, one of the clue for the diagnosis of achalasia cardia. And see the second statement, they saw a dilated esophagus, again favoring achalasia cardia. But the question was not achalasia cardia. The question was not achalasia cardia. In achalasia cardia, because the LES is in spasm, the lower esophagus is dilating, you have a stasis of the food and fluid. And naturally, there is a great association of candidal esophagitis with achalasia cardia. That knowledge I wanted to pump into your brain. An association of candidal esophagitis with achalasia cardia. What was the other clue which was given? What was the other clue? The sharp clue. The sharp clue was the coloration. What is the color of the precipitate? White exudative. This is a clue. White. White exudative superficial ulcers. Very classical. Excellent. Very classical of Candida. Very classical of Candida. Very classical. Superficial ulcers. So naturally, you take an esophageal biopsy to confirm the candidal esophagitis. Okay, can somebody tell me what is the treatment? Once you diagnose candidal esophagitis, what is the treatment that you give anyone? Shoot anyone. Very good. Priya, excellent. Anyone? Any other takers? Fluconazole, she have told fluconazole. Yes, you can use systemic therapy, fluconazole. Can somebody tell me, Abhi, what is the dose like? Abhi, not amphotericin B to start with. No, you're wrong. You're wrong. The best answer, no, 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 no. As per hand, Abhi, okay. Anyway, your doses are okay. I will tell you, you start with a higher dose. You give a front loading concept. What is a front loading concept? You treat it with a high dose to start with, around 200 to 300 or 400 milligram. That is better, 200 milligram or 300 milligram. You start with the loading dose, followed by 100 to 150 milligram for around 10 to 14 days. That is the treatment plan. Locally, you can give some statin application and other things. Remember, it's a fluconazole. Always remember the causative organism, Candida. Don't stop there. What are the species like? Anyone, species. How many species? Many, many species are there, no? Anyone, what is the common species? Anyone, Candida, complete it. Anyone, albicans, very good. Any other species? Any other species? Kansai, very good. Then tropicalis, don't forget, no? Yes. So remember, Candida glabrata, very good. Priyadarshini, very good. So excellent discussions. That was really correct. Then LDS relaxation manometry, that is, that was, I looked at, then dynaphagia, dysphagia, white plaques, fluconazole, 200 to 400, around 14 to 21 days. And if the Harrison states very clear, if it is resistant to fluconazole, what next? The next modality of pharmacological agent is voriconazole and posaconazole. Latest, voriconazole and posaconazole. Latest, you should be very thorough. If fluconazole doesn't work, what next for the systemic candidiasis is posaconazole and voriconazole for the knowledge purpose. So the treatment is oral fluconazole in a dose of 200 to 400 milligram front loading concept, followed by 100 to 200 milligram daily for 14 to 21 days. 2 to 3 weeks you need to treat, not for daily or 5 or 6 days. No. And what is the importance of esophageal candidiasis? Anything related with HIV? HIV, yes, it comes under the AIDS defining illness, esophageal candidiasis. Do oral candidiasis come, or an oral thrush come under AIDS defining illness? Do oral candidiasis no? That was asked for SPM. Vishnu, that was asked for SPM. One of the papers, it was asked only esophageal candidiasis, yes, but not oral. Okay, finished. The game's over. Now, then at this point, I would like to highlight one, I think 2 years or 3 years back, if you look at the NEET PG question paper, they have asked about same paper, same NEET paper, you get 2 questions. Both were, one was cytomegalovirus, one was herpes. Okay, cytomegalovirus, usually they give the history of immunocompromised or something like a transplant or something, a distal esophagus ulcers, more of a serpentine like that is a CMV with biopsy and inclusion bodies or something they will show. So like that will be the history. Okay, you remember your outline and other things, don't forget. Okay, herpes, again, punched out ulcers and other things, please. So go back and read about esophagitis and other blah, blah, blah. Those things are very important, very, very important. Can somebody tell me where you get a named entity called feline esophagus? Feline. Where do you get feline esophagus? Anyone? Feline. Anyone? Harshida? Yes, that is eosinophilic esophagitis. Eosinophilic esophagitis, where you get a feline esophagus or corrugated esophagus or ringed esophagus. No, Aditya, stop there. Aditya, please stop there. Aditya was telling GERD. Wrong. Wrong. This is a very famous mistake done by the students across the country. See, once you start searching in Google, okay, you get eosinophilia commonly in esophagus in GERD. I do agree. But feline esophagus description is given only in eosinophilic esophagitis, not in GERD. That is wrong. So feline esophagus, corrugated esophagus, ringed esophagus, multiple rings. That was once a NEET PG question. Both option was there. GERD was there. Eosinophilic esophagitis was there. Many students went and clicked GERD wrong. The best answer is eosinophilic esophagitis. So Aditya, throw away that thinking. Don't go with eosinophilic because NEET PG sharpness is very important. Don't avoid confusions. But I would appreciate your thinking process, because if somebody asks you which is the most common condition where you get eosinophils in the esophagus, don't go and click eosinophilic esophagus. No. What is the answer, Aditya? If the question is placed in a different way, it has to be GERD. Yes, it has to be GRD. GRD is the condition where you get most common condition where you get eosinophil in the esophagus. It has to be GRD. So that is, and see, apart from rings, you can get punctains, exudates, all those things you can get in eosinophil. What is the treatment of eosinophilic esophagitis? You can give swallowed fluticasone, steroid, budesonide, all those things can be given. Remember that also. Remember that also. Herpetic esophagitis, I have told, punched out vesicles. Okay, acyclovir, CMV, intranuclear inclusion. Okay. Here, let's hear one entrance question that comes as CMV. What is the drug of choice? What is the drug of choice? CMV. Anyone, any takers. Aditya, you only say. What is the drug of choice? What is the drug of choice? Harini, you are correct. Harini, you are correct. Anusha, you are correct. Okay, Vishnu, Priyadarshini, Gayatri, very good, excellent discussion, very good. Monisha. So Monisha was telling Valgan and Savita was telling GAN. Okay, now let me ask you, if the question is oral drug, with the question is oral drug for CMV, no, Meghna, you are wrong. There you are wrong. Why? There you are wrong. Why? Because see, you have two options. One is ganciclovir, you have valganciclovir. Yes or no? Ganciclovir and valganciclovir. Remember, the valganciclovir is the oral drug. Most of the students have got that confusion. Ganciclovir is actually available IV. Meghna, you got it correct. You got my point. Okay, so think, yeah, very good. So if they are asking you oral, it's Valga. Okay, if they are asking IV, it's GAN. So have that in mind. Okay, most of the students have got the confusion that ganciclovir is an oral drug. No, it's an IV medication, intravenous medication. It's an intravenous medication. Okay, that is okay. Valganciclovir I have told already. Then let me look at anything which I've noted on some points, but everything cannot be discussed. But I hope you all will be more knowledgeable. Yes, let's see. Okay, this thing many of them has got it right. No. Yes, what is a situation like this? Let's see. What is a situation like this? Let's see. Which was the question? Fourth question, no? Majority went for Crohn's colitis, but good response from the first thing. Okay, Clostridium difficile. Okay, but anyway, this is again I myself made. So see, majority, yes, majority got it correct. See, this is what is this, the picture which is showing in the endoscopy or colonoscopy that they have done? What is the picture? Anyone? What is the picture? It's not that tough question actually. If you can correlate both, it becomes really simple actually. Yes, this is that yellowish exudative pseudomembrane. Very good. This is the typical picture, a typical colonoscopic picture of pseudomembranous colitis, and there is no confusion. It's nothing but the Clostridium difficile colitis. Now, wait. Now, let me ask you, what does this picture show? Anyone? The pathology question. Yes, Harini. Yes, you people will be better than to interpret pathology better than me. But now, yes, very good. This is what I want. So I wanted you people to connect this volcanic eruption or volcanoes, whatever you wanted to bring. Most of them was saying the answer. So that both I wanted you people to connect. So that was a pseudomembrane. That gives a pseudomembrane's appearance. Yellow-white is the usual color, around 2 to 5 mm in size. They are actually very small, but they coalesce together and cover the entire colonic mucosa. But if we do the scopy very fast, sometimes they might look like feces, and if you go very fast, you might miss the lesion. So you should be very careful while doing a colonoscopy or sigmoidoscopy. If you have a suspicion of Clostridium difficile colitis, Harini, let me ask you one thing. What will be the presentation of a person with Clostridium difficile colitis? I'll give you two options. Harini and Meghna, I will give you two options. Bloody diarrhea, non-bloody diarrhea. Which one you wanted to go for? Two options. Namita, Namita, yes. Any Harini is confused. No response. Meghna is again confused. Prakalya is also yes, yes. That is it. It's not bloody. Usually, it is. Yeah, somebody was telling bloody diarrhea. See, this confused. I know that many of the students have got that. It's not that bloody. You don't get that much of blood. You get a diarrhea, of course. Okay, so it's not that bloody. That is important. And histopathology. What? One more thing. What is the other name for volcano lesion? Please write down and study summit lesions. This they might give you another in pathology books. You can go back and look in detail. Summit lesion, the pathognomonic. You get a focal ulceration with eruption. The inflammatory cells eruption. Eruption of inflammatory cells with fibrin, debris, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, yes, I wanted you people to think about Clostridium difficile colitis. That's all what I want at that point. And fever, abdominal pain, leukocytosis, that you should remember. Yes. And sometimes in stool, if we have a strong suspicion, we try to detect the toxin. We try to detect the stool toxin assay. There are two types of toxin, toxin A and toxin B. Hope you'd have heard about that. Toxin A and toxin B, very important. Okay, toxin A, Clostridium difficile, they might ask you, toxin A is enterotoxin. Enterotoxin. Toxin B is what? Toxin B is, what I remember is a cytotoxin. Cytotoxin. So that's what that is coming into mind. Go back and read about pseudomembranous colitis. So the disease progresses, that you should be detected. And many of the time, they will give you the history of antibiotic usage. Most often, they might give you some third generation cephalosporin. So something they might give you as, can somebody tell me what you will give as a treatment? If you have all these things, what will be the treatment like? Treatment, what you would use? Everyone with Vanco? Only Vanco? Only Vanco? Any of the things? Yes. Metro, fidaxomicin, yes, very good. And probiotics, definitely, yes. Is Vanco IV or oral? Is Vanco IV or oral? Yes, yes, it's an oral Vanco. 250 milligram QID you can give. This oral vancomycin. Sharp question. So be sharp. So there can be something like a fever, abdominal pain, yes, diarrhea, leukocytosis, raised total count. Then you do scopy, yes. Then nucleic acid that you might be lowering. Okay, let me ask you one more thing. Clostridium difficile, is it gram positive or gram negative? One of the PGA papers, that was the question. Anyone? Quick. Many are telling negative, many are telling positive. Yes, Kanda. So Magna lost marks, Chandana gained marks. So this is the reason. So immediately you will tell the answer, you will end up in wrong things. Sir. It's actually gram positive. Please study those who are telling, those who are all on a sudden they are making gram, it's a gram positive anaerobic. I'm just making you knowledgeable. Don't get humiliated when I'm calling the names. I don't want you people to sleep in the noon time. That is why I'm calling the names also. See, what I would tell is all those people who are hearing this session, take it from me, this NEET PG is yours, guarantee. So that is why we wanted to become better than others. Okay, that is the main target. So gram positive, don't forget, go back and read about in detail. 1 to 2 mm, I told the colonists involved. Okay. So that's it. Okay, it increases bit. So summit, please remember this name also, summit lesion. Please remember this name, summit lesion or volcano lesions. This also you should remember. Okay. Yes. Yes. Tricky question. Very tricky question. You might get confused, but the moment you read the questions, okay, fine. Once you read the options, you will see, let's see what is the scoring chart like. See, this is the scenario. Majority left, supraclavicular lymph node. See, the latest books, 40%. How much? 40% is liver. The latest. When hematogenous spread is also asked, it's liver. When nothing is mentioned and the liver is there in the option, go for liver. The statement given in the standard textbooks is liver, peritoneum, like that. Of course, I don't disagree with the lymphatic spread, but when liver is the option, that is the best answer. What is the other name for left supraclavicular lymph node? That sign called anyone? What is that sign called? Yes, okay, not Trousseau, it is Trossier. Yeah, Tanuja, you're correct. Any other name for that? Any other name for that? It's known as sentinel node or signal node. Yeah. Very good. What is the other name for this one? Periumbilical lymph node. Any takers? Periumbilical lymph node. One name of one nurse, Sister Mary. Very good. Sister Mary Joseph's nodule. Sister Mary. Suppose you are getting involvement. If it is a female with ovary, can anybody connect? What is that situation? Female lesion ovary. I'm taking you all into the next world, next pattern. Krukenberg. Very good. Krukenberg. Shiba, Swati, stay back there. Let me ask you one more. Gastric with peritoneal and with rectum, rectal shelf. What is that name? Starting with letter B. Yes, Bloomer's shelf. Bloomer. So gastric carcinoma, I wanted you people to remember certain terminologies. Bloomer's shelf, Sister Mary Joseph, Trossier, not Trousseau. Okay, somebody was telling about axillary lymph node. What is its name? Somebody was telling about axillary. Any word? It's called Irish node. It's not Virchow. It is Irish, actually. Irish node. Irish is left axillary. That's what I remember. It's left axillary. Irish node, left axillary. Yes, Tanuja, you're right. It's a left axillary. Yes. So peritoneum. So metastasis, Krukenberg, periumbilical, hematogenous spread. So whenever you see an iron deficiency anemia, okay, and see what clinical history, how can you differentiate an esophageal lesion with a stomach lesion? In esophageal lesions, again, the appetite, look at the appetite. Okay, the appetite will be well preserved in esophageal malignancies. They are not able to consume because of the dysphagia, that's it. But in stomach lesions, you get an early satiety, a loss of appetite, a stool local blood positivity, an iron deficiency, anemia. You start suspecting it. Is that clear? Yes or no? You start to suspect it. Yes? Yes. Very good. Okay. And one more thing, Aditya, stay back there. Let me ask you, you are given two choices, if and a gastric ulcer and duodenal ulcer, which is more likely to go for malignancy? You are given two options, gastric, duo. Harshita, Priya, yes, it is gastric ulcers. Duodenal ulcers, majority of the time it's benign and the causative goes to H. pylori. Okay, gastric ulcers, unless otherwise proved, we endoscopists, even if we see a 0.5 centimeter ulcer size, we biopsy it. If we discover a gastric ulcer at any point of time, we do a biopsy. We don't take a chance. We do biopsy because gastric ulcers higher chance for malignancy. And the most often is CS stomach radiosensitive or radioresistance, mostly radiosensitive or radiosensitive. I will ask you, I don't know where I'm going. Kyuk, come on, Gayatri. Yes, it's mostly a radio-resistant. So yes, radio-resistant lesion. Yes, radio-resistant lesion. Okay. Next. So 70-year-old. This I'm little bit. This is again a tricky question. Let's see the where you have the sixth one. See. I see.